Okay. Um, my name is Jacob, and I am, since this past spring, the manager of Business Sweden's New York office. Before joining Business Sweden, I was a management consultant in the Nordics and with what is now a Bain & Company. And there I worked extensively on both strategy development and transaction advisory for primarily retail companies, but also across some other industries as well. And since joining Business Sweden, I am now working with the rest of the organization to improve our services so that we can better serve our clients, especially on more complex questions. And as part of improving our offering to retail and FMCG companies, especially in a time like this during the pandemic, we're currently in the midst of writing a playbook for how to enter the US market via e-commerce. So either through your own store or your own website, or through distribution platforms like Amazon, for example. And as part of this, this initiative, we'll be running a set of webinars with relevant external parties focusing on the various parts of entering the US market. We're basically trying to cover the full value chain in a sense, going through everything from what kind of registrations you need in order to enter the US, FDA certifications, labeling, all the way up to how you acquire new customers, how you build your brand, and how you grow your business in the US. And of course, today we're focusing on influencer marketing specifically. And so how you can use it to raise awareness, how to build your brand with influence marketing, and ultimately, of course, how you can convert people into paying customers. And I'm super excited to have Julia Undin with me. She's the general manager of the New York office for Relatable, one of the premier influencer marketing firms in the world. So I'm really excited to hand over to Julia to get us going with today's content.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for the introduction. So hi, my name is Julia. As Jacob mentioned, I work as the general manager of Relatable's New York office. I started my journey at Relatable in Stockholm because our head office is there. So I've been in the company for more than 3 years now. And yeah, I'm super excited to speak with all of you today, and hopefully you'll learn something new. But yeah, let's jump into the agenda directly. So we will cover everything from like who we are as a company. We'll go through that influencer marketing is a maturing media landscape. We'll also go through influencer marketing as an essential part of the strategy, how to measure, optimize, and qualify. We'll go through some successful cases, some differences between the Swedish and the US market, and also look into some future trends and innovation. So to start off then, I think we'll start off then with who we are. So what is Relatable? And Relatable is a global creative-centric agency. And what is extremely important to know about us is that we're not a roster, meaning that we don't have any influencers connected to us. We're completely talent independent, meaning that we can basically work with anyone. We're super technology and data driven, and we've managed to identify 2 million channels on YouTube, 10 million creators on Instagram, as well as 3 million channels on TikTok that you potentially can work with. And since the start, we've been up and running for about 4 years now, more than 4 years. We've been doing more than 25,000 collaborations. We're a global team. I am, as mentioned, based here in New York, and our head office is in Stockholm. And then we also have an office in London and one in LA as well. And we have done campaigns in more than 50 markets since the start. And also very good to know about us is that our approach to influencer marketing is built around these 3 things. So you got to have the tech and the tools in order to do successful influencer marketing in 2020, 2021. That is basically becoming a commodity, but we also rely a lot on our experience and expertise from working with a lot of different brands globally, but also gathering data and insights from hundreds of brands. But the last part is extremely important. And I think creativity and strategy is essential in order to do successful influencer marketing. Moving on, I could talk about the future of influencer marketing forever, but I think influencer marketing is so much more than just a story and a post on Instagram. It's understanding the whole landscape in terms of having the influencer distribution as the best way to get in front of the consumer in a very authentic way, but then also the importance of having a lot of high quality content to reuse in other social channels, meaning also that the traditional production companies are dying because they're lacking in cost efficiency and also fast produced relevant content. And also, apart from that, it's extremely important to know that like you should amplify your influencer distribution and content with branded content ads to take your influencer marketing further and be able to control the reach and frequency with audience tested branded content. Moving on, this is what I would say or call our little brag board. As you can see here, we've been trusted by a lot of very cool brands all over the world and in a lot of different verticals and industries as well. We'll actually come into a few case studies later, but I think influence marketing in general is one of the most important things is like who to work with and why, and how do we then find the right people for you and your brand. With our unlimited, or if you can call 17 million people unlimited, talent pool with influential people from all around the world, we can identify the perfect people for your brand with not only the right target, with the right style and content, but also the right audience. So let's talk about technology and data for a second. And I think it's so important to understand that like when looking for influencers, we have to look at both the person, starting off with things like where should they be located, what categories, what type of content are they producing, what minimum engagement are we aiming for, what following range, etc. But then even more importantly, of course, looking at the audience and ensuring that we reach the right audience for your specific brand. And in this example here, we then want to work with people in the US, interest in fashion, beauty, age group 18 to 34, gender female, but we can also look at other things that are important for specific brands, like income could be a very important thing, or education, or basically a lot of different things that we can look at in order to find the perfect people for you. So very short summary here of Relatable and who we are. So we are talent independent, meaning that we're not at all limited to a certain group of people. We can basically work with anyone. We are audience first, or we have an audience first approach to looking to finding influencers, because that's the way you're going to get the best results, but also the most bang for the buck. And we've done more than 25,000 collaborations across 50 markets. And we operate globally. So that will lead me to the second part of this webinar here. And I want to start off with saying that this is a shifting media landscape. And what do we actually mean with that? So people are becoming media companies. And some future outlook. The freelance economy is on track to become larger than the entire employee workforce by 2027. And for half of the influencers that we work with, this is already their full-time job. And as you might know, there is a constant fight between PR and marketing. And we've actually done a quite large study with more than 350 marketing teams across 8 main industries in the US, UK, and Sweden to identify challenges and also to where influencer marketing is heading. And what we wanted to find out is, how do you define influencer marketing and what is that to you? And as you can see here in this slide here, you can see that 22% still thinks that influencer marketing is PR. But with that being said, 72% thinks that it's marketing. So we can definitely say that there has been a shift from PR to marketing. And why we believe that, to give you some examples, as you can see to the left here, traditional PR is more about gifting, guesswork, unpredictable outcome, and lack of trust. Whereas modern marketing, what we really believe in, of course, is a paid media channel. You can predict it, you can measure. It's more about brand trust, brand reputation, authentic content, and brand positioning. So how do we then incorporate influencer marketing as like an essential part of the strategy? So it's so important to, like, first of all, we have to really step away from being just like a one-off, fun to explore, like gut feeling activation from just an influencer post to something of a completely different value. So we really have to work with influencer marketing in a much more smart and strategic way. And over 25,000 collaborations so far has taught us that the industry is maturing, and our clients now demand audience first, data-driven, no gut feeling. They demand real KPIs in terms of engagement, consideration, traffic, conversion, etc. But also the ability to media plan your reach, regardless of KPI. So this slide here, it really shows that, like, we have to work, or we have to create cross-marketing solutions and use content throughout different channels and formats like programmatic, Instagram, YouTube, editorial, and paid ads. And we should do that in order to create frequency, but also to be more cost efficient, more consistent with our marketing, of course, to create a much bigger value beyond an influencer marketing post. And now we come into how do we measure and how do we qualify? And this is, of course, an extremely important part of influencer marketing. And there is a challenge, or a current challenge for brand and clients, is really to connect the right objective with the right KPI. What usually happens is that we have, or clients or brands saying that we want to achieve X, Y, Z, but we want to measure something else, meaning that it's so important to really define success and clarify expectations. So going back to the marketing study that I talked about before, we can see here that we asked the 350 marketing teams, what is your main objective when running an influencer marketing campaign? And as you can see, around 50% of the answers were awareness and consideration. However, when we then asked the same people how they would primarily measure success of an influencer marketing campaign, we could see then that the most common answer, around 50% again, was conversion and sales. And why I really wanted to show you this is only because I think it has to do, this is lined up for failure and wrong expectations from the start. So we really, really want to make sure that we always set expectations in order to actually get the best results out of every activation that we do. But how we will do that then? How can we do anything differently? And how do we basically connect the dots? And I think it's very important to, a step one is basically to identify the objective and the KPI for the campaign and the activation. And you can, as with any other media channel, it's hard to go through the whole funnel in just one single activation. But step two, so looking at the awareness, consideration, and conversion, and see how that is actually connected to the different tiers of influencers. So depending on your marketing objective and KPI, there are basically different strategies on how to achieve those. And an influencer is not only an influencer regardless of size. There is actually data showing that their different sizes of the accounts are actually driving different KPIs. So step three then. The step three is identify and qualify the ambassadors. And we have to remember here that technology and data comes first. We have to really make sure that we will reach out to the right people and having an audience first approach. However, with that being said, it's so important too to understand that the human eye is still crucial. You have to make sure that we find people that can carry your brand story and are a brand fit for you. And this is just a little fun example, and just showcasing the importance of audience first. So now I can't see you, and it's hard for you to interact, but you can imagine that you are a luxury, American luxury brand, and you want to reach out to people then like a bit older women, or old is a definition, but and you wanted to reach out to them, and you want to sell this product. And at the first glance, you might think that the person to the left is the perfect fit. Yeah, this feels like on brand for me. But then looking at Lenny de Boston, maybe not. However, looking at the audience here, you might change your mind. So to the left, you can see that the person to the left reaches out to single women 18 plus in Sweden in the beginning of their career, whereas Lenny de Boston is reaching out to married women 34 plus in the United States with a high income. So who would you choose? But also going back to the brand fit again, of course, Lenny de Boston won't be the perfect option for you, since Lenny de Boston is not usually posting about luxury brands and is not really a great spokesperson for you. Anyway, moving on, I think to summarize, when you manage to cover all of these three things, so the execution strategy, the authentic storytellers, as well as data and insights, influencer marketing is one of the most powerful media channels in the world. And let's have a look at some cool case studies and some clients that we work with. I wanted to start off with, I don't know if any of you could guess what this is, but I wanted to include this one because it's a Swedish brand who work with us to be locally relevant in the US. So this is actually Filippa K, and they wanted to launch their new athleisure collection, Filippa K Soft Sport, in the US. So they wanted to work with very cool women in the lifestyle vertical, specifically in LA and New York. And the fun thing about this activation is that they wanted to create amazing content, of course, as what we successfully did, but they also wanted to drive sales at specific Equinox gyms in LA and New York. And the results of this activation were truly amazing, and we managed to sell out all the clothes in all the Equinox gyms. So that's something that I think is super cool. Moving on, I don't know if I mentioned before that Relatable is the global exclusive influencer marketing partner to Condé Nast, which is something that we are, of course, extremely proud of. So this here is, you can see some cool content from an activation we did with Puma and Condé Nast. And by teaming up with trendsetters in fashion and lifestyle, but also other verticals as well, we wanted to create content at the same level as a photo shoot in Vogue, but at the same time drive sales to their resellers, Foot Locker. And this was done extremely, or like very successfully, working with 35 powerful women across Europe. Another global client of ours is Volvo. And we help them with everything from setting the strategies for new launches, as well as maximizing the effect of the strategies, or of the launches, sorry. And we've also played a very big part in creating content for their social media in a much more cost-efficient way than before. And then we have Adobe, and I think Adobe is, of course, a super, super cool brand, and we've worked with them in, I think it's more than 3 years now, doing everything from working with some of the coolest photographers in the world, like showing how they edit their photos. So actually about a month ago, when we worked with around, I think it's 100 people promoting the Adobe Max conference. Yes, and then we have One Brands. I think One Brands is a cool activation just because they teamed up with us to create engagement around their new plant-based bar one bars. And what I love about this is that they managed to, like, through storytelling and very personal storytelling, delivered authentic and inspiring content, allowing the audience to discover one brand in a way they never did before. Last but not least, for the case studies, I wanted to highlight another Swedish company as well. And I hope that some of you have seen or know about Livesum. But Livesum is, I also wanted to include this case study just because it's a very successful YouTube case. And we have actually helped Livesum to turn YouTube into their best channel for doing performance marketing. And one of the advantages for Livesum with doing YouTube marketing was that very high CTR, but also that the videos continues to perform weeks, months, and even years after they were first published. So that's super cool. And I also want the results to speak for themselves here, but I think, yeah, we managed to get more than 43 million views, as well as more than 2 million app installs, which I think is kind of crazy, actually. Anyway, moving into some interesting differences and similarities with the US market versus the Swedish market. And I must admit, like, when I moved to the US, I was a bit scared of the competition. Like, will they be able to influence marketing better than us, etc., etc. However, now into, I think it's more, 1.5 years into my journey here, I can definitely say that Sweden is in forefront when it comes to influencer marketing compared to the US market. So if you have a product or a service that you believe in that works in Sweden, I definitely think that you can make it in the US with the same approach as well. Another thing that is quite interesting to mention is, of course, the pricing. And we can actually see that the pricing when it comes to influencer marketing is a bit lower in the US, quite surprisingly, maybe. But with that being said, it's, of course, as you know, you can't really compare. Like the US, it's an enormous market. So if you want to get impact, it requires bigger campaigns and bigger budgets. But then you might ask yourself, okay, but we don't have a huge budget like some of the brands that you showed us already. But that's fine. We usually recommend then clients that we work with to really focus on 1 or 2 markets, being locally relevant in that market to, like, take over that, because it's much harder to take over the US rather than taking over Sweden, if that makes sense. And another thing is, of course, the health and wellness trend. I think, of course, that is universal, but it's very, very it's very big in the US, but especially in markets like LA and New York. And I think that also leads me to one of the interesting insights around the US in general and influencer marketing here, is that it's easier to treat Sweden as one country than it is to treat the US as one country, meaning that you can't really say that people in the US are like people in New York, because that would be, not really accurate. Anyway, moving on, I think this TikTok requires its own slide because it has more than 100 million monthly active US users, which is crazy. And it's up nearly 800% since January 2018. And one thing that I think is kind of cool with channels like TikTok and YouTube is that it gives you the chance to go viral. And with that being said, I think that's for both organic posts, but sponsored as well. A good example of that from our end is that when we work with Verizon and their and Go90, we actually saw that a few or like several videos in that activation went viral, and because the fact that they were so contextually relevant, and YouTube became Verizon's cheapest and most effective marketing channel for views, which I think is kind of cool. And also in terms of TikTok, I think hopefully, well, I can go to the next slide here. Hopefully, most of you have seen this one already, but this is a great example of how you can actually, you can go from nobody to somebody overnight. So this guy here, a TikTok user, has achieved more than 11 million views in no time after he was just filming himself, enjoying a cranberry juice, cruising around with his skateboard, and listening to the Fleetwood Mac song Dreams. And unfortunately, we realized just before this meeting that you can't hear the sound. So if you know the song, you can try to visualize. And yeah, I guess that video was more fun to me since I heard the sound. But yeah, you can go in and Google the Fleetwood Mac song and TikTok, and you'll see it if you haven't already. But I guess most of you have, since it got so many views. But then we'll come into some very exciting things, which is, of course, the future and innovation. I think this slide is super interesting, that 70% of millennials are willing to spend more time and money with brands that that represent what they care about. And what that actually means is also that to truly be a part of culture, you need to be a part of the conversation. And now it's time for realness, authenticity, tonality, and timing. And those four things are very much key in order to stay relevant and work together with the influencers that you want to work with. Sorry. And influencer marketing investments will grow, this is predictions, to over $20 billion globally in 2021. Which says a lot about the industry and how much it's growing. And 30 to 45% of companies will invest more in influencer marketing in 2021, according to global surveys. But also, when we ask our clients, we can see that 39% are, according to the survey, planning on spending more in 2021. So you have to work with a 360-degree marketing across all channels. Success comes from authentic partnerships between brands and influencers. So it's not at all about like throwing money at people to say nice things. You have to work with the influencers who are proud to work with you and share your company values. So to summarize, it's not a one-hit wonder. It's brand positioning over time. And that's actually everything I have for today. And you feel free, because we're going to go into if you have any questions. But if you have any questions that might not pop up right now, feel free to shoot an email to my email address or to Jacob's as well. But yeah, thank you all so much. Fingers crossed that you learned something new here today.
Great, thank you a lot, Julia. That was really, really interesting. Being the chairman of a quite small e-commerce startup, I'm taking notes here on my side to try to figure out how we should utilize this going forward. And on that note, you mentioned quite a lot of big brands here that you work with, which is super cool. But I suppose that some of the people listening in, they probably represent somewhat smaller companies. And can you speak a little bit about that? Sort of what size do you think a company needs to be in order to get in contact with you and sort of make a meaningful impact?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and I think it's so important to understand that we work with all types of clients. We usually say that we work with brave startups, but also bigger clients as well. Since the start, we've worked with, I think it's more than 200 brands. So it's basically all sizes, and it's so important to understand too that Relatable is not at all a one-fits-all kind of company. We always try to customize everything as much as possible for the client's needs. So, and also, like, feel free to send me an email, and I think it's, for us, like, the question of size in general is kind of hard to answer, but we still want to make sure that because we believe in working in scale, meaning that we don't believe in working with 1 or 2 people. So we don't want to do something that is too small either, but that's something that we're happy to discuss with any potential clients.
And how long are typically the engagements that you do?
That depends a lot as well. We work with clients on campaign basis, especially then a lot through other agencies as well, like media agencies, on a campaign basis, but we also work on a monthly basis, quarterly and yearly basis as well. But if you were to we believe a lot in test, learning, scale, meaning that we should be able to optimize all the results that we get in terms of optimizing the audience, the creative, everything basically, and to get better and better results moving forward. So it's if you would be interested in doing a pilot activation, it could be anything from a few weeks to a month or even more, depending on the scope, basically.
Okay, we got a couple of questions on getting this presentation afterwards. So I'll just let everyone know that it is recorded, so you will be able to find it afterwards. Yeah, and I'm not sure if we have any more questions at the moment. I don't think we do, actually.
Great. Feel free to send questions after as well to both Jacob and I. Yeah,
and just in terms of sort of the initial investment, I realize, and you sort of spoke briefly around it in a qualitative matter, but is there a minimum budget to sort of get going, you think? And what is that in that case?
Now I would love to refer to a Swedish expression like how long is hur långt är ett snöre? Exactly, that's the expression I'm looking for. But that is such a hard question to answer because it depends so much on the scope and how we. And it also depends. I think it's important to understand that influencer marketing, once again, is not only a story and a post on Instagram. It could be any platform, and the platforms will also vary in price. YouTube is more expensive than Instagram. It's hard to get away from that, and also, of course, the tiers of the influencers, everything. So that question is kind of hard to answer in a general meeting like this.
That's fair. We also got a question here. How many influencers you worked with at the most at sort of one time?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I mentioned the Adobe case we did just a month ago. That was 100 influencers. But I think the biggest one still is a collaboration we did with Polaroid and Saflo, where we actually work with 260 influencers posting in seven countries in one day. So I think that's still now there might be some colleagues listening in and they're like, but we did this one. But yeah, I think it is Polaroid and Saflo, and that's a super cool activation that I think you can actually find that case study on our website as well if you want to know more about it.
Okay, I think that's it for today. So thanks everyone for listening in. Thanks a lot to you, Julia, for guiding us through this. And perhaps you should just go back to the slide with the contact information for everyone to see. And we're of course more than happy to talk to any of the companies that are currently listening in. Thanks a lot for today.